Well, hi everybody. My name is Josh Pack. I am going to be your professor for Christian beliefs this semester. First of all, let me start off by saying that I recognize this is going to be kind of a strange semester in a number of ways because many of your professors haven't necessarily taught in this format before, and many of you haven't learned in this kind of format before. We're walking through some really difficult days, really strange situations with the whole COVID-19 and all of those situations going on. So I'm going to try to grant as much grace as possible through the semester. Insofar as I see that you are clearly trying, and I would ask that you would grant me grace as well. I think that everything should be pretty much laid out pretty clearly in the course, but also I want you to hear me when I say please make a point of communicating with me. If you have any sort of questions whatsoever, if there's anything that you are not 100% clear about, please reach out to me. I will emphasize that communication is key. Communication is key. You have to talk to me in order for me to know what's going on. I've had students before who had some sort of major family tragedy, and I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was they stopped coming to class. And so I do not expect that your studies are the number one thing in your lives in those kinds of situations. But all I need to know is what's going on with you. So if you have something come up throughout the semester, please just reach out to me. Even if it's just that you're stressed, please reach out to me and let's see if we can talk about it and see if we can help out with some of that. So I wanted to walk with you through the syllabus today. That's kind of our main point that we want to get at. First of all, you'll see that this is Christian beliefs. I've got this syllabus pulled up for 9:30, but if you're in the 12:30 section, it'll be the same thing. Starts off, that's my information right there. I work in a church in Irvington, Kentucky, which is it's almost 2 hours away from Lindsey Wilson. But the good thing is, it's in a different time zone. And so when I cross over into Lindsey Wilson, it really seems like only an hour's drive because the time zone changed. So if you need to get in touch with me by phone, you can do so at my office number right there. That is 270-547-3502. And also want to make sure that you obviously are able to reach out to me by email. I keep my email open all the time, and I also I have my email linked to my phone, so anytime you email me, I should be available. I will also tell you these are kind of weird times for me personally because I'm about to become a dad. My wife is, as of this recording, she's 17 weeks pregnant, and so this is going to be a really weird semester as we're gearing up for her to give birth and for me to completely change. So it's just kind of a weird time for all of us, I guess. If for some reason you reach out to me, I say that because if you reach out to me and I'm not available, there's probably something going on. I try to make myself as available to you as possible. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And if for some reason I don't get back to you immediately, I'll get back to you absolutely as soon as I possibly can. So we are actually not going to be meeting in that room that's listed there. We're going to be meeting in the Goodhue building. It was reassigned since this syllabus was written, so I'm going to have to update that for the online classroom. You have here a course description of what we're going to be walking through this semester. This course is a survey of Christian thought, beliefs, and traditions through the ages. We will talk about what some of the early church fathers thought concerning what Christianity was, and we'll talk about all the way up to today. What are Christians around the world pretty much united on? That's the way that the beginning part of the course goes. We started off talking about doctrines concerning the nature of God, the fall of man, sin, Jesus Christ, atonement, and salvation, all of those different things. All of those things which are central to Christianity. So as we talk through those things, we want to find out kind of where those doctrines came from. doctrines are not necessarily things that just kind of appeared one day. They actually had to develop, and people had to come up with these things. And so we want to look at how these doctrines came about, who the people were who created those doctrines in the first place, and then later on in the course, we'll get into some of those things about which the church today disagrees. So the beginning part of the course, we'll talk about the nature of God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, those kinds of things. Those things we can agree upon. But then there are other things that we'll get into later on in the semester, like communion and baptism and those kinds of things, where Christians around the world will disagree, even on minor points. And so those are some of the things that we'll kind of be looking at throughout the semester. We'll talk about the church in all different ages, through the Reformation, the Puritan age, and even what the contemporary church looks like. We'll also be discussing key Christian theologians like St. Augustine and more recently Mother Teresa. My studies, personally, I'm working on my doctorate right now. My studies focus a lot on a church father by the name of Origen. So you'll probably hear me a lot throughout the semester say, Origen would say such and such about this. It is widely agreed upon that Origen was probably the greatest theological mind that the church ever produced. So his ideas are really influential even now. So that's somebody that I look at a lot, and we'll probably get into quite a bit throughout the semester. The learning outcomes that we have as an institution are listed right there. Those 4 things are the important things that we as Lindsey Wilson College want to emphasize. Those are our institutional goals. We want to strive for the highest degree of educational excellence by providing programs based upon the findings of research and sound professional practice. When you take a course, one of the things that you want to know is that the person that you're learning from actually has genuine experience in that field. And so my field is theology, and so you'll be learning a lot about that this semester. Second thing there, Lindsey Wilson's institutional goal number 2 is to create the best possible environment for the individual growth of students through the intentional and cooperative efforts of the entire college community. We recognize that community has been kind of a strange thing recently, but we also want to make sure that you're well aware that you are in an environment where you can come to us. And I want to emphasize that once again. Whatever it is that you may be walking through in life, please do not hesitate to come to me. Some of y'all may not necessarily come from church backgrounds, and this is not a course that is designed strictly for Christian believers. It's really just a course that's designed to introduce you to what Christianity is all about. So I say that because if you have a pastor figure at home or somebody that you would feel more comfortable talking with about some of the things that we will discuss in class, feel free to do that. But if you don't, or if you're not necessarily 100% comfortable with that pastoral figure and you are comfortable with me, feel free to ask me about that as well. I want to make myself... my striving is to be somebody that you feel like you can trust, and not just that you feel like you can, but that you really can. So feel free to reach out to me at any given time. Number 3 there, to prepare students for life and career in a rapidly changing world. There are a lot of times where we talk about theology where it feels like we're just dealing with really heady concepts and we're not actually dealing with stuff that's going to apply to you in real life. But the reality is that theology does have practical applications to the everyday. So we want to make sure that hopefully you get those links along the way. If you don't necessarily feel like that's a thing, let's talk about it. 4th thing there is to develop intellect, character, and self-esteem through value-centered learning experiences. We want to make sure that we're producing people from this college who are good, contributing members of society is really what it is. And that you yourself feel like you have grown personally as a result of your classes here. If you are in the Christian Ministries program, a couple different student learning outcomes that we have here. First of all, we want to make sure that you're able to effectively communicate in various ministry settings. If you're looking at going into ministry, well, you probably need to be able to communicate effectively. That doesn't just mean that you're able to preach or teach or anything like that. It means that you yourself have a solid enough understanding of what Christian theology really is that you can then express it to other people. If somebody comes up to you and says, well, tell me a little bit more about this whole Jesus thing, then you're able to go into as much depth and detail as they're able to handle, really. Second thing there, Christian Ministries graduate would be able to argue and defend and critically evaluate basic tenets of the Christian faith and formulate a worldview consistent with the Christian tradition. Again, we want to make sure that you yourself are able to weigh out, is this actually consistent with Christianity or is it not? You will encounter many, many things in this world that will claim to be Christian and are actually not. You will also encounter many things in this world that would not necessarily identify with Christianity, but actually do kind of illustrate some Christian principles. So those are some of the things that we want to be able to do. Third thing there is develop discipleship strategies appropriate to ministry settings. And hopefully this will be kind of that foundational point for that. If you were looking specifically at this course, though, we have 7 objectives for the Christian Beliefs course. At the end of this class, you should be able to do these 7 things. First of all, you should be able to identify and understand beliefs common to most Christians. That's part of why I say at the very beginning of the course, we start out with things that Christians can agree upon. We agree upon Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, those kinds of things. We want to make sure that that is recognized by you. Second thing we wanted to make sure that you're able to do is define key Christian vocabulary terms. There are certain things that, because I was not a Christian ministries major in my undergraduate degree, that I only came to understand when I was in seminary. Things like the definition of what Advent actually is. There are certain things that it's actually really helpful for your long-term ministry journey to be able to define those key terms really precisely. So that's another thing that we want to look for. Third thing is define and describe typical Christian practices. You want to be able to say that, worship looks kind of this way in this denomination, worship may look this way in this denomination, but they're still Christian practices. Fourth thing, we want to identify and utilize proper methods of biblical interpretation. This is a big one. You're going to find that all throughout your life, people try to tell you what the Bible has to say. And the goal is that you would be able to say, no, that's not necessarily what the Bible has to say. That the Bible actually can speak to the Bible can speak to us in different ways, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that we are being faithful to what the Bible is intending to say. I'll get into a little more of the specifics of that as we talk about biblical interpretation in our second week. Fifth thing, we want to be able to articulate the progression of church history. Somebody comes up to you and they say, you know what, the Baptist church was the church that was founded by Jesus. Is that the case? Or is it the case that Jesus founded the church and that things changed from there? Well, some people would make those claims. So we want to make sure that we are able to understand where the church was, where the church has come, and we want to make sure that we have a solid understanding of how to express what Christian history has actually been. Sixth thing, we want to be able to explain major denominational differences. That's pretty self-explanatory. There are a lot of different denominations. There are, at this point, thousands of denominations within Christianity. We're not looking at the specifics of every single one of them. That could be a course in and of itself. But we want to be sure that we could go through and basically say Methodists, by and large, would say this. Baptists, by and large, would say this. Roman Catholics, by and large, would say this. That kind of thing. And then finally, we want you to be able to logically and plainly formulate a personal belief statement. What is it that you think? At the end of the day, this is something that is intended to help you understand what mainline Christianity believes, but then also help you to understand what your own personal beliefs are. There are things that I, as a pastor, would look at about Jesus and say, that sounds to me like really solid evidence that he actually was the Son of God. But you, in reviewing that same evidence, might say, I don't know, I look at that and I think he was a fake. Well, we want to make sure that you actually have solid reasons for the things that you believe, whatever they may be. So that's kind of the big thing that we want to emphasize. And at the end of the course, we have what's called a credo assignment. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But basically what that is it gives you an opportunity to say, these are the things that I agree with as far as Christianity is concerned, and these are the things that I disagree with. And that's just totally an opportunity for you to be able to pick apart what Christianity is and pick apart what your own beliefs are. So all that is to say that then we have these required texts, these 3 required texts. You will need a Bible, especially because I teach this from a pastoral perspective. We're going to reference the Bible a lot. You can have any translation except for a paraphrase. A paraphrase would be something like Eugene Peterson's The Message translation. When Eugene Peterson starts to get into really a whole lot of Scripture, it's not necessarily word for word. It's all just, this is what is meant by the text. So when you look at a paraphrase translation, rather than saying verse 1 this, verse 2 this, verse 3 this, it'll actually say something like verses 5 through 7, here's a paragraph. Verses 10 through 14, this is a paragraph, that kind of thing. So we want to make sure that we have any translation except for a paraphrase. NIV, NLT is actually acceptable as far as I'm concerned. ESV, King James, whatever it is that you would feel most comfortable with. King James, for a lot of us who are not necessarily churchgoers, may be really, really difficult to understand. It's a much older translation. So if you are not necessarily somebody who is familiar with church and things like that, I would really encourage you to look at something like the New International Version or the English Standard Version. Those tend to be a lot more readable and a lot easily comprehended. So, also 2 books by Dr. Terry Swan. You will need A Faith Called Christianity, and you will also need a book called What in the World Am I Doing Here? Those are really the only required texts for this course. Matter of fact, hold on just a second, let me pause this. I'm going to get those books. Okay, I'm back, and I know that seemed like forever. So this is the first one. This is A Faith Called Christianity. That's the primary text that we're going to be using for this course. You'll have most of your readings will come out of this book. But you also need this, What in the World Am I Doing Here? Because that's one of the books that one of your first big time assignments is actually based off of. So make sure that you get both of those. We have course assignments and exams and topics and all that kind of stuff. You can find that in the course calendar. We'll walk through that in just a minute. Requirements. I need you to be on time. Please be mindful of that. I also need you to know I don't tolerate the cell phone usage in middle class. Matter of fact, let's go through this. I do not tolerate cell phone usage in class unless it is very clear that you're looking up like a Bible passage or something like that for the purpose of the class. Okay. Second thing is, I don't tolerate sleeping in class. If you decide that you are just too tired that day, if you're, super duper stressed, but you still feel like I just need to be in class, let me know first. Let me know before class so that I don't call you out. Because otherwise, I'm going to say, get your stuff and leave. I don't tolerate sleeping in class. So that's one of my big requirements. I want to make sure that you're being respectful of me just as I try to be respectful of you. You need to read the assigned text before the class session starts. You need to complete the coursework as designated and on time. I do take off points for late work. I'll just be honest with you, I'm pretty flexible as far as if it's midnight versus 1 a.m. or something like that. But I'll also say that if it starts to get into 3, 4 in the morning, something like that, you might as well just go to sleep because I'm already going to take I'm already going to take some points off for the assignment being late by that point. So please just make sure that your work is in on time. You also are going to need to participate in class discussion and group exercises. I have a couple different group exercises throughout the course just to change it up and break up the monotony of lecture. And each week you'll have a class discussion. Most weeks you'll have a class discussion online. Be sure you're participating in those as well. Let's see. Hold all questions until such time as the instructor asks for them. Sometimes I'll get on a roll and don't necessarily realize how long I've been going. If you have a question, don't just blurt it out in the middle of class, but raise your hand and it'll be fine. Same old rules as always. Let's see. So here is your course calendar right here. You have everything you need to know, or pretty much should be, right here in this course calendar. That very first week, we're starting on a Saturday. I know that's kind of weird as well. Usually, your new modules will open up on Mondays. Usually Monday at 8 a.m. I will open up a new course module for you. So you will be able to go into the online classroom. Matter of fact, I have that pulled up here. When you go into the online classroom, the very first thing you should do is go into the content section. And the content section will look a little bit different for you than this because for me, I've got every single week displayed. Yours will come up week by week. You can see that I've got it available to display to you after such and such date. So every single week, a new one of these will open. And once it opens, if it opens, there we go. Once it opens, you'll have your tasks for the week. I have broken down all the stuff that you need to have available, have completed, I should say. All the stuff that you need to have completed that week right there. And you can see that I've got a copy of the syllabus right here. These are supplemental readings that you'll also need to go through. But every week should look pretty much like that in your online classroom. You will also, while I'm thinking of it, if you look at the syllabus and you say, oh, it says that I have an SQ due this week, which is a study question, you'll be able to go into the discussions tab over here and you will see your study question for that week. You'll have all of your stuff available right there on Blackboard. So this first week, you should be doing your readings from A Faith Called Christianity and those 2 supplemental chapters from that book that I've uploaded there for you into the online classroom. You also want to make sure that you're going through this book for those first couple weeks. It's pretty brief. It's not a very long book, but you do need to be going through it. I'll have another video where I talk more about some of the specifics as far as my requirements on some of these major assignments are concerned. Okay. You can see here the grading scale and the major assignments that you have, really what your grade is going to be throughout the semester. First of all, you're going to have this What in the World project. It's very simple using this book. I'll actually walk through that in a separate video with you. You'll have that What in the World project. That'll be worth 15 points your final grade. You'll have your almost weekly study questions. Those will be worth 10 points. Each one of those is just 1 point. Each week is just 1 point. They're super simple, and they should prompt you to think, but they also should be relatively easy. So just make sure you're taking care of those each week. You'll have a midterm exam. That'll be 15 points. Shouldn't be all that difficult for you if you're paying attention, if you're taking notes. I also post a review before the midterm and before the final. So you should be able to, if you can go through and answer all the questions that I've got on that review, you'll be just fine for the midterm exam. The single biggest issue that people have with the midterm and with the final is that they don't pay attention enough and that they don't make sure they can answer those review questions. I've had numerous folks who came to me and they said, I've gotten most of these review questions, but I just want to make sure that I have this one and I'm having trouble finding it. I'll help you find what that answer is to that review question. Please come and talk to me. I want to make sure that you do well just as much as you want to make sure that you do well. So let's talk about that kind of stuff. You'll also have the biblical interpretation assignment. We'll talk at length about that in the second week. You have the worship observations. We'll talk about that in a separate video. And the credo assignment. That won't come up until much later in the semester. So you should be okay with that, to wait on that for a little while. All right, let's see. Attendance and makeup policy, especially with the setting, with the class set up the way it is right now. You need to be there. You need to be in class. And if it's your day to be there, please make sure that you are. I don't allow that many absences. Matter of fact, this says a total of 4 excused absences, but because we're only doing 1 day in class each week, I think we're going to cut that down. You need to have fewer than probably 3 absences throughout the semester. Late work, like I said, has to be due, has to come in by midnight. Truth be told, 11:59 p.m. On the day the assignment is due. I give a little bit of flex time. I may let you get it in 1 o'clock or something like that. But once it gets past that, I start to take points off. Laptops and electronic devices. I don't think people realize. I can tell when your eyes are not necessarily doing something that is related to your classwork just by the way they move when you're looking at your computer. So if you're one of those who brings an electronic device for note-taking, make sure you're not watching TikTok videos or some kind of trash in the middle of class. Make sure that you're actually paying attention and using that for notes. If I think that it's not being used for notes, I'm going to ask you specifically, and I'm probably not going to call you out in the middle of class, but I'm going to ask you at some point to just bring a notebook, because I don't necessarily think you're taking notes on that laptop. Okay. So a really big one for me, academic integrity. I have had to fail students before because it was very clear that they plagiarized something. You need to be honest in what your work is. I will, if I see that you clearly made an effort on an assignment, you'll get points for it. But if I see that you took pieces of that assignment from somebody else, that's an issue, and we're going to have a conversation about that. Even though I am a pastor and consider myself overall a nice guy, I will not tolerate plagiarism. Hear me when I say, I will not tolerate plagiarism. I have had students, granted it was a bad instance, but I had a student basically take somebody else's entire assignment and try to pass it off as their own. And I read those closely enough that I notice those things. And so when that happens, you will fail this class. So make sure it doesn't happen, please, for your sake and for mine. If at any point throughout the semester you feel like you did not receive a grade that was consistent with the work that you put in, first of all, I would ask that you come talk to me. That's actually consistent with what the syllabus itself asks. First, go to the faculty member who assigned the disputed grade. If you say, Professor, I feel like I put in a whole lot of work with this assignment and that was not reflected in my grade, well, let's talk and let's see why it may have been lower than what you were thinking. If we have a conversation and you still feel like you did not get a fair grade, or that I was not fair in what I said, we can go to the dean. That would be Dr. Kurt Lee. We can go to Dr. Lee and we can talk about it together. But I've never had somebody come to me and be like, you were super unfair with how this was done. So, but I also want to make sure that you're aware that that's available. If you feel that this was done very poorly, let's talk about it, and then we can go and talk to Dr. Lee as well. There's a whole series of steps that are there. And if for some reason it got to that point, we could certainly go beyond that. So, finally, a student who wishes to question a final grade should follow those procedures down there. 1, 2, and 3. Confer with the faculty member who assigned the disputed grade. If for some reason that can't be resolved, you would submit that to the Academic Affairs Office, and they would actually go through, and we would talk about that and see what grade should be assigned instead. So, again, a big thing that I would emphasize, though, is I want to be able to work with you on those things first and foremost. I have had students at the end of the semester say, I didn't think I was going to get that particular grade. But once we talk about it, and once they kind of see why things were assigned the way they were, then we usually kind of go, oh, okay, well, oh well. A big thing I would advise you to do is to keep track of what your grades are throughout the semester, so that at the very end of the semester you're not totally caught off guard with what your grade is. I recognize that grades are important, and I also will say that a lot of people will write this class off as just kind of a joke class. I don't consider it such, and so I want to make sure that we're being fair about what the class is. I don't think that this is your only class. I don't suffer from that delusion. But I also want to make sure that you're held to a high standard. I feel like you are in academia, and you should be held to a high standard. So, okay, all of that to say, now we've got this COVID-19 statement. You're going to be in class usually 1 day per week as far as your actual attendance is concerned. And then you will also have remaining instruction provided to you this way, online. You will you'll be able to go through and again just look at what the tasks are for that week. I'll have a lecture assigned, that kind of thing. So make sure you're checking all that stuff out. If you do not feel well, you are not permitted in class, especially with this COVID-19 situation going on. We need to make sure that everybody is safe. So if you don't feel well, first of all, let me know that you're not going to be in class that day, but you also need to get in touch with the Dean of Students. Let's see, policy for verification of student identity and protection of privacy. That's mostly just for online classes. Institutional review board policies. That's not something that's going to affect you all this semester. Statement on disabilities. If for some reason you have like a learning disability or something like that, please come talk to me, and we'll make sure that any sort of accommodations that you need, you should be able to get those. You also have access to the Academic Success Center. Please take advantage of that. That's a super helpful resource. And I think it's beneficial for so many of us. You will also have access to the Writing Center. The Mathematics Center won't apply for this course. But you will probably need the Writing Center, some of you. I'm very strict about making sure that your assignments are written according to appropriate spelling and grammar. And so I want to make sure that when you submit something to me, that it's very clear that you actually did utilize proper spelling and grammar. Especially for folks who are going into something like nursing. If your nurse wrote something for you and couldn't spell a word correctly, it would probably make you nervous. All of us, because we're going into professional fields, need to be able to write well. And so, if you get feedback on an assignment that says you did not utilize proper spelling and grammar on this, I encourage you to take a trip to the Writing Center. And do that sooner rather than later, because your spelling and grammar actually apply to every major assignment throughout the semester. So, especially for crying out loud, y'all, we've got word processors now that'll actually walk through what's appropriate spelling and grammar and what's not. So please, make sure that you're using good spelling and grammar. Final exams, they are not scheduled appropriately on here. No, wait, they are. My brain. Oh, no, wait, they're not. Crud. No, these are not appropriately scheduled because I don't know what happened there. They should be taking place in mid to late November. Your final exams will take place in mid to late November. Should be the Thanksgiving week, the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of Thanksgiving week that'll take place. I'm going to try to make sure that we have an appropriate understanding of what the final exam schedule is for the final posted copy of the syllabus. So, your final exams will take place that week. I think it ends up being November the... Hold on. 23rd, 24th, and 25th of November is what that should be. So, okay, email policy. Make sure that you're using the lindsay.edu email address for me. My name is Pack, Joshua Pack. And I've had several students try to email me at Park, and that's not my name. So if you try to email Park J, you will not reach me, and your assignment will not go to the right place, and all that kind of stuff. Email me at packj@lindsay.edu, and then you'll reach me. Cell phone and headphone policies. Cell phones have to be in silent mode during class time. Unless you have some sort of prior arrangement with me. What that really means is you come to me and you say, Professor, I am... there's a really bad situation going on at home, and I'm expecting a phone call at any moment. Fine. No hesitation whatsoever. Leave your phone on vibrate or something like that, and you go ahead and do what you got to do when the time comes. Headphones and earbuds may not be worn during class time. Not okay with that. There are several students who felt throughout the years like they were okay to just listen to music while I was trying to lecture. You ain't going to do well in the class that way. Adding or dropping a course. You can get all the details on that right there. And then at the very bottom there, I can amend the syllabus at my discretion because I get that power. So, thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Feel free to get in touch with me via phone if that is something more comfortable for you. I'm going to be putting up some videos about your earlier assignments very soon. So I will see you in class this week. See you soon.